On June 14, 2020, Manchester. Just before dawn, armed officers from Greater Manchester Police move in. The target, a quiet flat believed to be at the center of a nationwide criminal network. The door goes down. Inside, chaos. Cash scattered across the floor. Drugs hidden in furniture. And a set of encrypted phones, the kind used by the UK's most organized and secretive offenders. Police didn't know it yet, but those devices would expose something massive. A criminal hierarchy trading tons of Class A drugs and military-grade firearms across Britain. At the top of it all, one name kept appearing in the decrypted messages. Payyabills. His real name is Mohammed Omar Malik. An ordinary man on paper. But behind encrypted screens, he controlled millions of pounds in drugs, weapons, and money. His orders moved through couriers, stash houses, and coded chats, all under the illusion of safety. But that illusion was about to break. Because while Malik's men thought their phones were untraceable, police in the UK and Europe were already inside the network. Every message, every transaction, every gun deal is recorded in real time. So how did a single digital handle, Payyabills, lead investigators to one of the biggest organized crime groups ever dismantled in Britain? What roles did his lieutenants play in keeping the empire alive? And what mistake turned encrypted secrecy into their undoing? Before we continue, if stories like this make you realize how deep organized crime runs in our cities, don't just scroll past. Hit subscribe. Because what's coming next might make you rethink how safe we really are. Long before the raids, before the encrypted phones and the headlines, Mohammed Omar Malik was just another face in Manchester's inner city sprawl. Born and raised in the northwest, he grew up in an environment where poverty and opportunity walked opposite paths. In areas where work was scarce and gang presence was strong, the streets often filled the gaps that families and futures could not. According to open court records and police reports, Malik's early years were marked not by violence, but by ambition, a hunger for fast money and status. He started where many in the city's underworld begin, small-time dealing, moving low quantities of cannabis and cocaine through local estates. The Northwest during this period, particularly Greater Manchester, was becoming a hub for drug supply lines stretching down to London and across the Irish Sea. Organized groups were growing smarter, more connected, and more violent. And Malik, still in his 20s, was taking notes. His first encounters with the law were minor, petty thefts, suspected involvement in street-level drug activity, the kind of early brushes that rarely make headlines but often shape futures. For Malik, these experiences didn't deter him. They trained him. He began to understand distribution chains, how product moved, how to avoid surveillance, and how to build trust through fear and reliability. Every arrest, every caution, taught him what not to do next time. By the late 2010s, he had graduated from the streets to a wider network. He was now working with contacts across Manchester, Bolton, and Salford, bridging links between regional suppliers and national distributors. His role evolved from courier to coordinator, moving drugs, managing debt, and quietly building a reputation. But as law enforcement got smarter, so did the criminals. Traditional phone lines were no longer safe. Police intercepts were catching more gangs than ever before. And that's when Malik, like hundreds of others, turned to the newest weapon in organized crime, encrypted communication. EncroChat, a global encrypted network used by criminals, promised total anonymity. It offered users a private, untraceable space to send messages, share photos, and coordinate operations. All protected by encryption so deep, even national intelligence agencies struggled to access it. For Malik, this wasn't just a tool, it was a revolution. Through his EncroChat handle, Payyabills, he built a digital empire, a network that stretched far beyond Manchester, managing kilos of cocaine, heroin, and firearms, all through messages he believed no one could ever read. What he didn't know was that his greatest source of protection would soon become his downfall. By 2018, Mohammed Omar Malik had evolved from a street operator into a serious player. He was no longer moving grams, he was coordinating kilos. Court evidence later revealed that Malik was now trafficking Class A drugs, primarily cocaine and amphetamine, through a trusted network that stretched across the Northwest. This was when the name Payyabills began circulating quietly among criminal circles, and, eventually, inside intelligence briefings. Malik's strength wasn't in charisma or violence. It was in control. He built trust not through talk, but through results, deliveries completed on time, money collected without question, and silence kept at every level. As his operations expanded, he relied on a small but loyal team. Adrian Gonzalez, who managed key stash houses, hidden storage sites where drugs, firearms, and cash were stockpiled. Connor Sandlan, reliable courier, moved bulk shipments across counties, often under the cover of legitimate business travel. And Ryan Cooney, the quiet mover, ensuring product moved cleanly, profits returned safely, and attention stayed elsewhere. Each had a role, and each believed in the promise of protection, encrypted phones, coded messages, and the illusion that law enforcement couldn't see. But behind the scenes, police intelligence units were already tracing patterns, phone activity, suspicious travel, and unexplained cash. Malik's name had begun to surface in quiet meetings within Greater Manchester Police and Operation Venetic task forces. They didn't have proof yet, but they were watching. People always say, if it was that big, I'd have heard about it. The truth is, most don't hear until it's too late. If you're still watching and haven't subscribed, do it now, so you're never in the dark about the crimes happening right under our noses. By early 2019, Mohammed Omar Malik was no longer a name whispered in back alleys. He was a figure known across the northwest, quietly expanding his reach from Manchester into the Midlands and Scotland. His network was disciplined and precise. At the center of it all stood a single base of operations, an Ancoats apartment, described by police as a stash house for drugs, weapons, and cash. Inside, there was order in the chaos, phones encrypted, cash stacked and counted, and firearms wrapped in cloth, ready to move at a moment's notice. From this command point, Malik orchestrated a multi-million-pound empire using EncroChat, an encrypted messaging system once believed to be unbreakable. Through it, he directed couriers, arranged payments, and scheduled deliveries, all under coded usernames and aliases. Every shipment, every move, every risk, was a message sent in total confidence. Police later uncovered messages revealing staggering volumes of trade. Between January and May 2020, EncroChat data showed that Malik's group had distributed 739 kilograms of cocaine, with a wholesale value of roughly £25 million, and a street value nearly 3 times higher. But drugs weren't the only currency. Through the same encrypted channels, Malik arranged firearm deals, weapons like Grand Power pistols and Scorpion submachine guns moving discreetly through his network. Each weapon carried its own price tag, its own buyer, and its own potential for bloodshed. To mask the movement of money and goods, Malik relied on front companies, the most notable, Global Trades UK, a business that looked legitimate on paper but served as a cover for laundering profits and importing illegal materials. His success was built on layers of secrecy, trusted associates, untraceable messages, and hidden cash. It was a criminal machine running so smoothly that even police surveillance struggled to find its seams. But the cracks were already forming. Because even the most tightly wound operations have weak links. In April 2020, a courier's arrest triggered alarms throughout the network. One stash house was compromised. And suddenly, panic spread across encrypted screens. Messages flashed between handles, disbelief and fear condensed into a single question. Feds can't get in them, can they? At its height, Omar Malik's empire moved like a silent organism, fast, coordinated, and almost invisible. What began as a small circle in Manchester had now evolved into a nationwide network. There were stash houses in multiple regions, couriers driving thousands of miles, and millions of pounds in drugs and firearms exchanged across encrypted devices. Each man in the hierarchy had a role, and Malik ensured no one ever knew too much. Adrian Gonzalez, the broker. From his Ancoats stash house, he connected Malik's supply to other criminal groups, a middleman with the authority to make or break a deal. He handled kilos of cocaine-like inventory, matching buyers and sellers with the precision of a stock trader. To the outside world, Gonzalez lived quietly. But inside his flat, police would later find fingerprints on packaging, scales, and ledgers coded in numbers only Malik's circle understood. Connor Sandlan, the mover. Trusted for his reliability, he transported bulk shipments of drugs and cash across the country. Police surveillance would later trace his van on long overnight journeys, Manchester to Birmingham, Liverpool to Glasgow, routes that coincided with intercepted EncroChat messages about deliveries and pickups. What Sandlan didn't know was that one of those trips would become a crucial thread, a trip the police were already watching. Daniel Gibbons, the frontman. Malik's faith in him grew as profits did. Gibbons wasn't just handling deliveries, he was creating cover businesses, setting up fake import companies like Global Trades UK to disguise weapons entering the country as industrial equipment. Behind spreadsheets and invoices were coded references to pistols, Scorpion submachine guns, and ammunition, all disguised through legitimate shipping channels. Daniel Waters, once just a courier, now had a more valuable role, recruiting others. He expanded the chain by bringing in drivers, often young men promised quick money, unaware of the scale of what they were entering. Many believed they were simply transporting packages. Few asked questions. None were told who they truly worked for. Andrew Cooney managed supplies and ensured that the right quantities moved when needed. EncroChat messages later revealed him discussing prices and stock levels, coded references to white for cocaine and toys for firearms. He was meticulous, calm, and dependable, a vital cog in the operation. And then there was Sean Hogan, part courier, part distributor. During the police surveillance phase, Hogan himself purchased a firearm from Cooney. What he didn't know, he was already under surveillance. The very moment he held that gun in his hands, officers were building the evidence that would later destroy the network. Their communications were encrypted, but the hierarchy was unmistakable. Handles like Payyabills, Stellaboat, and Humble Waffle buzzed with constant orders, pricing, drop-offs, payments, and coded reassurance. To them, the system was flawless. Every deal was sealed through messages that felt untouchable. Every risk buried beneath encryption. But in quiet offices across the UK, National Crime Agency analysts were beginning to do the impossible, link aliases to faces. Pattern analysis, geolocation data, cross-referenced with raids and arrests. The walls were closing in, even if Malik's men couldn't see it. There were warning signs. A courier detained in April 2020. A message intercepted but dismissed as noise. A brief panic in the chat logs, delete the device, one message read, followed by silence. Then, suddenly, Payyabills went offline. For Malik's men, it was a moment of unease. For investigators, it was the first sign they were close. The empire was thriving on the surface, shipments continued, money flowed, but behind every encrypted message, law enforcement was already reading their words in real time. They didn't know it yet. But their empire was being watched from within. It happened quietly, without warning, without leaks, without suspicion. In April 2020, as Omar Malik's organization continued to move drugs and weapons across the UK, something extraordinary was happening, not in Manchester, but in a digital lab in France. There, French cyber specialists had achieved what no one in Malik's world thought possible: they had cracked EncroChat's encryption. Within days, the breakthrough was shared with European law enforcement, and soon, the National Crime Agency and UK police forces were reading the encrypted messages of Britain's most dangerous organised crime groups in real time. This was Operation Venetic, the largest covert digital operation in UK history. Every word typed by Malik and his lieutenants. Every transaction, every warning, every coded order, was suddenly visible to the very people they were trying to hide from. It started with one discovery, a message from Payyabills arranging a deal. Then another, instructions for moving firearms to a contact in Manchester. Then dozens more, coordinates, payment codes, stock figures, and detailed records of kilos and cash. Law enforcement didn't just see what they were doing, they saw how they thought. Across the northwest, plainclothes officers began shadowing vehicles listed in the chat logs. Every name, every handle, was matched to a face. Connor Sandland, Daniel Gibbons, Adrian Gonzalez, Andrew Cooney, Daniel Waters, and Sean Hogan were all slowly identified and placed under surveillance. They didn't know their phones, the very tools they trusted most, had become a window into their world. Weeks later, the panic began. Malik noticed odd silences. Contacts stopped replying. Deliveries delayed. Messages surfaced within the network: is this line safe? But by then, it was too late. The system that once protected them had already betrayed them. At 5:40 a.m. on June 14, 2020, tactical units breached a flat in Manchester. Inside, officers found cash, drugs, firearms, and phones, the same devices Malik once called clean. Hidden under sofa cushions and behind cupboard doors were the physical remnants of a digital empire. Elsewhere, the arrests rolled out in a precise, coordinated sequence, one city after another. Sandland stopped at the roadside, his van searched. Gibbons was detained in his vehicle, a weapon was discovered nearby. Gonzalez was cornered at the Encrocat stash house, where investigators recovered packaging and drug residue. Cooney, Waters, and Hogan were all arrested in a 72-hour window that dismantled the operation piece by piece. And Malik himself, the man behind the alias Payyabills, was taken into custody. The same EncroChat messages that once gave him power now formed the spine of the prosecution's case. Within hours, his digital empire collapsed. What took years to build disintegrated in a single morning. Thousands of messages, once encrypted beyond reach, are now projected onto courtroom screens, line by line, proof by proof. In one recovered exchange, an associate asked Malik, "Can they ever get in?" He replied with confidence, "Never." That single word would echo through the trial, a chilling reminder of how invincible they all thought they were. The betrayal didn't come from within his circle. It came from the very technology they trusted most. Because for Malik and his crew, the question was no longer if they'd been exposed, but how much the police already knew before the first door came down. The courtroom became the final battleground. Weeks of evidence unfolded, decrypted EncroChat messages, secret ledgers, weapon lists, and names once hidden behind aliases. Every encrypted word now stood as proof. Over £1.5 million in drugs, 25 firearms, and hundreds of messages sealed the case. The judge called it one of the most dangerous organized crime gangs in Britain. Now, each man would face his reckoning. Omar Malik, the mastermind. Operating under the handle Payyabills, Malik directed the entire network, coordinating weapons, drugs, and cash with military precision. He built an empire through secrecy. He received 38 years. Adrian Gonzalez, the broker. Gonzalez controlled the Encrocat stash house, linking Malik's group to rival gangs. He arranged large-scale trades of cocaine and firearms with ruthless efficiency. He was sentenced to 35 years. Connor Sandland, the transport chief. Sandland managed the movement, vans, safe routes, drop points. He was caught with weapons during a run, exposing Malik's chain of supply. The court gave him 28 years. Daniel Gibbons, the frontman. Once a trusted distributor, Gibbons set up fake businesses to disguise weapon imports. His company served as Malik's legal mask for crime. He was sentenced to 30 years. Daniel Waters, the recruiter. Waters began as a courier but rose quickly, recruiting new drivers and widening the operation's reach. His messages detailed payments and routes. He received 22 years. Andrew Cooney, the supplier. Cooney linked drug and gun supply, ensuring the streets stayed stocked. He supplied Hogan and others, unaware police were watching his every deal. He got 29 years. Sean Hogan, the buyer. Hogan helped distribute cocaine and purchased a firearm directly from Cooney. His careless deal, caught on encrypted chat, tied him to the group. He was jailed for 19 years. The verdicts echoed across Manchester. What began as encrypted usernames ended in iron doors. Each man, once hidden behind a screen, now faced decades in silence. These men thought no one would ever know. But the truth came out. If you've made it this far and still haven't subscribed, ask yourself why. You don't want to be the one who hears about the next operation after it hits the news. Stay ahead, hit subscribe now. When Omar Malik was led away, his empire crumbled behind him. What had once been a vast network of drugs, weapons, and encrypted secrecy was now reduced to evidence in sealed bags. Operation Venetic didn't stop with Malik. It swept across the country, over 1,000 arrests, countless raids, and hundreds of firearms seized. The operation reshaped the way organized crime worked in Britain, proving that no digital wall is beyond reach. In Manchester, quiet began to return to streets once ruled by fear. But for many, the damage ran deeper. Families torn apart by addiction. Communities are still struggling to rebuild trust. EncroChat's downfall became a warning to those who followed. The same technology that promised safety had become their undoing. Power bought with fear never lasts. And Malik's case stands as proof that no code, no system, is unbreakable. The message from law enforcement was clear. If you're still using encrypted phones for crime, we're already listening. Omar Malik built an empire behind a screen, and believed encryption would protect him. But even secrets have an expiration date. When the messages stopped, so did his power, and the digital empire he ruled crumbled in silence. Was it worth it? The millions earned, the lives destroyed, the decades now lost behind bars. In our digital age, how much power do criminals gain from encryption, and how far should police go to break it? Because as one empire falls, another quietly begins to rise. And the next message might already be in motion. So before it's too late, like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because the next case might be unfolding right now, closer than you think.